the HAC-7 rifle. In general, of course, any weapon designer wants what's best, except for the British, who frankly hate their own soldiers. Further, if the designer has combat experience, this want what's best gets bonuses in the form of already tried both good and not so good. But does it always work? Alas, no. By the time Robert Holloway opened his gun company, he had already been through 2 wars, first Vietnam, and then he went to Rhodesia at the very end of its existence as a mercenary. When he returned home to Texas, he became sick with an ambitious plan to make the best automatic rifle based on the known designs. In 1984, the rifle was on the cover of a magazine. Though far from guns or American riflemen, he filed a patent application in 1983, and without waiting for the patent to be granted, went to register a gun manufacturer. The brainchild of the newly formed Holloway Arms Company was given a simple name, HAC-7. In fact, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of the good old AK, which was designed with separate receiver and trigger box, which was a mix of FAL and Armalite Stoner rifles. For 7, 62x51 cartridge, using standard AR-10 magazines, converted to locking by rear latch. In addition to the 4-position gas regulator, the rifle had a separate full gas shutoff valve on the right side of the gas block. The whole rifle was disassembled with a single cartridge. The bullet nose was used to press out the pins, and the cartridge case could serve as an improvised screwdriver and wrench gas engine with long piston stroke, bolt frame with the recoil spring going inward along the gas engine axis, 2-stop locking, a direct reference to the AK, which was familiar to the designer from the previous years. However, there were a few nuances. The bolt frame was overcomplicated and untechnologically designed. It was welded from 2 parts, and the bolt was turned by a separate pin, which was inserted into the bolt's transverse, bore through a copy slot. A special guide was mounted under the frame, which prevented the downturned bolt from catching the cartridge under it or the feeder of the emptied magazine when the bolt was rolled back. The plunger ejector in the bolt face is a hello from Eugene Stoner. By the way, it was designed to be installed in the wrong way, with 180 degrees rotation, so that when the rifle was fired, the bolt would try to send the cartridge case not to the ejection window, but to the opposite side. This was done, of course, for a good purpose, as the rifle had a left-handed version, the HAC-7L, with left-handed ejection window, where the same bolt was installed with the bolt face rotated. But this did not exclude the possibility of improper assembly, and the manual specifically reminded about it. The gas system was also overcomplicated, if we remember the progenitor. Holloway refused to use the long gas piston, but moved the gas chamber backwards and connected it to the gas block with a thin tube. The rifle was designed in several versions, including standard version with 510 mm barrel, sniper version with 610 mm barrel, and shortened version with 406 mm barrel. But first, let's remember that Holloway designed the rifle to be an automatic rifle. Let's leave out the question of how automatic fire would be controlled with its weight of just under 4 kilograms in the standard version, and 7, 62x51 NATO cartridge. And this, pardon me, required official classification from ATF to be able to put the rifle into circulation, and registration of all serial numbers of rifles produced as full auto. After sending in his application, which was accompanied by descriptions and photos of 12 completed pre-production rifles with trigger boxes with full auto trigger, he waited for a response. However, time went on, and there was no answer from ATF, so that the newly deployed production would not stand idle for nothing. The retired major decided to work on the civilian market for the time being, in order to have time to recoup the investment. He quickly made civilian trigger boxes, started advertising, and wrote a letter of rejection to ATF, saying that we had changed our mind about producing full auto rifles, so we have ordinary semi-auto rifles, not even third class. But here bureaucracy played in its best style. ATF inspection came to the company after sending the waiver, when the production had already started producing semi-automatic HAC-7S. Well, show me where you're going to make machine guns. And yes, show me the rifles with serial numbers from a 0001 to A0012. which were listed in your application as pre-production prototypes of automatic weapons. And then there was dead silence, because it turned out that those very rifles had already lost their self-triggers, and moreover, they had been shipped from the warehouse to several stores. And Holloway didn't realize how lucky he was. It was only 1984, when such a thing was not fatal. Since 1986, when new-made automatic weapons on the civilian market came under a total ban, sending dealers even naked trigger boxes, not the complete weapon, would have sent Holloway to the bunkhouse with a guarantee. However, the most pleased of all were those store owners and new buyers who were rounded up by ATF inspectors to make sure there was no auto-trigger on the shipped rifles and to ask in a tricky voice, "Did they offer you, by any chance, kits for a little rework at the same time?" Meanwhile, the company's business was going badly. First of all, the 5.56 mm caliber was more and more demanded on the market, and Holloway did not understand the needs of civilians. Secondly, the first series were still pretty crude in terms of quality and design. I owned one of these over 20 years ago. Serial number 282 or 283, I think. I bought it new for about $500 when the FAL cost about $800. My rifle worked fine as long as the magazine jaws were intact and the gas was adjusted correctly. These jaws were easily deformed as they had no stiffening ribs on the back. The overall feel of this thing was more like a pre-production sample. Lots of sharp edges. The pins were used almost everywhere, and I ended up making some from drill shanks. The ejector catch pin was one of them. The buttstock was horrible. The butt plate was flat and had nothing to hold on to, so in a hurry it would slip off the shoulder. The lightweight tubular stock frame was made of aluminum and attached to the hinge with a pin that was too thin. That spot loosened after 300 rounds. I ended up fabricating a wooden buttstock that replaced the entire folding assembly. When I mounted the scope on it, it turned out that it was impossible to use the charging handle. The reason was that my fingers were hitting the ring's sight mount from the owner's recollection. To be fair, on the magazines, the question is for the AR-10 from which they were taken. The design is really stupid. If you liked this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell so you don't miss new exciting videos. See you in the next video, where we will continue to reveal the secrets of the gun world. See you soon.